Tonight, we are swinging back around to our teaching on the different elements and how they relate to God and the things of God. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at fire. Tonight, we are starting the teaching looking at the earth, the actual ground, the dust, the firmament that we live on, that we stand on. So, if you all are ready, go ahead and hop in, get comfortable, and let's start taking this ride. All right, hi and howdy do. This is your man, J.K. Moore. Welcome back to Breaking Tradition. So, yeah, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, we looked at the element of fire and we looked at all the different scriptures and verses. Well, not all of them, but we looked at a lot of the verses and scriptures in the Bible that describe the element of fire as natural fires that took place, spiritual fires that took place, and even metaphorical uses or images of fire. So, to be completely honest, y'all, I was going to kind of leave it right there. I said, maybe I'll swing back around eventually and talk about the other elements. And by elements, I mean the ones that we refer to as fire, earth, air, and water. But I got clear cut instructions from God. No, do not drop this right now. Continue on with it right now. And if I didn't need any further prompting to do it, he actually sent a couple of physical confirmations, signs, whatever you want to call it, to continue on with this study because since the beginning of the year, we have had about 3 or 4 earthquakes right here in South Carolina alone. Had one at the beginning of January and week before, either last week or the week before last, had another one right outside of Columbia in our neighboring county called Lexington, which I felt all the way here. And then like 2 days after that, there was a strong earthquake in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the meteorologist reported that some people had reported they felt the effects of that all the way down here in Columbia, South Carolina, where I live at. So Charlotte is about hour and a half, 2 hours away from us. So yeah, I'm like, oh, okay. Like I said, if I didn't need any other prompting, God definitely sent the prompting about it. So earth being the next element that we're looking at. And then when we get to the part actually talking about earthquakes, we're going to look at what causes earthquakes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. All right. So we're going to start, at the very beginning. Book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse number 1. All right. Book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse number 1. And the subheading for this section says the account of creation. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. So, again, right here at the beginning of the creation process. Now, we don't know if this is the beginning of the creation of the universe, or he's just talking about the creation of our galaxy, or the creation of just our local solar system, which contains the planets and the sun, that we're around. It just says in the beginning, so we ain't gonna look too deep into it. We'll keep it right there. He created the heavens and the earth. Now, when you see heavens in the Bible, it's not always talking about what we know of or think of a lot of times as heaven as the dimension, the realm where God dwells, where the elders dwell, where Jesus is sitting at his right side. That's one of the heavens. Heaven's also described as what we know is one of my favorite places to watch documentaries on, outer space. Yeah, for those of you all watching this, clearly you can see how much I'm in outer space. But it's also talking about what we call the air or our sky, our atmosphere, heavens. So again, we don't know if he's where he's talking about creating all of the heavenly realms, just the space and the air above the earth, or just our earth. But anyway, what we can agree on, there's no debate about it, is God created it all of creation, everything that exists, everything that we know of, everything that we don't know of. Okay. So, see, there's a level here, a process started with the heavens, and the earth was last. And then in verse number 2, it describes how it was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. So, this is one of those instances where I say that the Bible and science actually agree and coincide. Because if you look at any documentary, or if you've taken any class dealing with the creation of the universe, the creation of our galaxy, more specifically, the creation of our planet, yeah, even they agreed that when the planet was first created, it was covered totally and completely in water. The surface was, even though there was firmament or ground, it wasn't there yet. And it said even darkness covered the deep waters. Well, at this point, that makes sense. Oh, you know what? Duh, James. Okay, so at this point, we know he hadn't created the sun and the stars yet, because that's actually coming in the next couple of verses. So now that I got my head screwed back on right, yeah, this creation is talking about here, it's at least talking about the creation of our solar system or our galaxy. Let's start there, because again, it talks about how the stars were created, then the sun, and then the moon. So that's why darkness covered it. There was no starlight, there was no sunlight, and if there's no sun, then there was no moonlight. Was hovering over the surface of the waters. Notice it says it wasn't hovering over the waters and the land. It was just the waters. But verse number 1 lets us know that the land was there. All right. Let's go to our next one here. Okay, so we're still in Genesis number 1. Now we're going to look at verses 6 and 7. Then God said, "Let there be a space between the waters, to separate the waters of the heavens from the waters of the earth." And that is what happened. God made this space to separate the waters of the earth from the waters of the heavens. So again, different biblical believers and teachers agree that when our earth was first created, not only was the surface, the land that we currently live on, completely covered by water at that point, but also there was not a shield, there was a sphere of outer water even covering the planet. Okay, well, again, we have the writings right here that say that. So at some point, and I truly believe further in Genesis, when God sent the great flood, that was part of what helped to cause that flood. That outer barrier of water that was surrounding the earth for the longest time, okay, God actually brought it in. So that combined with the water that was already here, flooded out the entire earth. Said it I forget how many miles the water reached even above the highest mountain peak, which today, anybody who does even get close a lot of time to the peaks of these highest mountains, they usually end up dying. Not many people have been able to accomplish going up there and coming back safe. But anyway, so yeah, he separated the waters here that we call our oceans, our seas, whatever. But there was still earth, because it says waters of the earth, the planet earth, but also these waters were covering the land. All right. So you might be saying at this point, man, okay, you're doing a lot of talking about water. I thought this was supposed to be about earth. Well, the word earth is in there, and the land was part of this creation process. Not like he created the waters first and then created the earth's the land as an afterthought, but we're going to get to where that happens. Okay. So now let's flip over to Genesis chapter 3 and look at verses 17 through 19. Genesis chapter 3, verses 17 through 19. All right, and they read. So this is obviously a little further in from that creation process. And to the man, he said, since you listened to your wife and ate from the tree whose fruit I commanded you not to eat, the ground is cursed because of you. All your life, you will struggle to scratch a living from it. It will grow thorns and thistles for you. Though you will eat of its grains, by the sweat of your brow will you have food to eat until you return to the ground from which you were made. For you were made from dust, and to dust you will return. Okay. God right now is rebuking and I'm going to say what it is, cursing Adam and Eve because of their disobedience and eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Excuse me. So obviously, when God created the earth, and then he created the Garden of Eden, and then he created the man, and then from the man, he created the woman, and he had them both placed in this Garden of Eden. They were supposed to tend it, just like, okay, any of you people out there, landscapers, anybody with a green thumb, how you tend to your flowers or to your fields or whatever it is you grow from the ground. But that was supposed to be the extent of it. They were always going to have food to eat, and it wasn't supposed to be hard or a struggle. It was supposed to be a life of leisure, okay? Up until the point Adam ate and God came down and cursed him and did his thing. Adam and Eve were going to have literal complete dominion over this planet. And we know that because he gave Adam the honor of naming every animal from the three dominions, which land is a part of, or the earth is a part of: air, land, and water. Told him, you'll have dominion over it all. Okay. When it came to earth, he was the shot caller. Whatever he said, whatever he decreed, it was done. No questions asked. But because they fell out of good graces with God, well, now you got the struggle. Oh, I'll still make it to where your ground will produce food for you to be able to eat, but it's not going to be easy like it once was. You got to work. All right. You gotta work out them muscles, got to put your back into it, as the old folks would say. And also, for anybody who's ever heard of, or anybody who's, I would call more so a lot of old school parents would tell their sons that, yes, this is where the declaration that males are supposed to work. This is also why when God first created Adam, because again, he did have the job of tending the garden. Now, it wasn't cursed and wasn't going to be hard for him to do like it is now. Okay, but you still have to put a little bit of work into it, a little bit of muscle. That's why he naturally makes the male body, the muscles, stronger, because we are made to do more labor intensive work. And with great granddaddy Adam here being the literal prototype for all males to come, that's why men now, even to a big and mostly degree, that's why we are born with the capacity to have our muscles be stronger and bigger, because we have to work more labor intensive work is supposed to fall on us and not on the female. Okay. And the end of verse number 19 here: for you were made from dust, and to dust you will return. All right. That, again, part of that creation process. And you know what? I was supposed to have put that one in here. I don't know how I skipped. I think my thinking process was, okay, everybody knows that part about how Adam was created. But after God had created everything else, man, he created was the last of the creation. Literally saved the best for last. And it said that man was made from the dust of the earth. Now, he wasn't alive yet. It was just a vessel, a container. And then it said God breathed life into him, i.e., our spirits. Then the man was alive. So the real living part of us is not the muscles or the heart or the brain. It's when that spirit is when our spirits finally exit out of these bodies that the body is truly dead. So people may say, well, wait a minute. But dead bodies, they can still grow hair and nails still grow. I've heard stories of bodies sitting up, arms and legs moving, people sitting right up on autopsy tables or wherever dead bodies. Those are just reactions. It's called muscle memory and muscle reactions. And yeah, as far as the container, yeah, the cells in here still live for a certain amount of time. But those are related strictly to the part of the frame, or in other words, what God put into these frames that He made for us. And every now and then, as we know, for whatever reason, only God knows, He allows that spirit to go back into that dead body, and it comes back truly alive. Okay, now it's getting up. Now it's moving and talking and doing whatever. We got told by Jesus that one of the spiritual gifts that some people would be blessed with would be the ability to raise the dead. And He meant that across the board. And whether you're spiritually dead, which we all are until we get washed by the blood of Jesus and get redeemed, in other words, born again, but also those that are physically dead. Again, you've seen it on movies and TV. They got the little sensors hooked up to somebody, and break out the defibrillator pads and clear, boosh. And you see the little, call it flatlining. And after a while, they're like, okay, call it, this person ain't coming back. Yeah, after that flatline, okay, no more activity from the heart, because the brain still lives on for a while. But no more activity from the heart, okay, they're gone. Until somebody comes along and God tells them, yeah, it's not really time for them yet. So I need you to pray and declare and decree in the name of my son that this person comes back to life, that their spirit gets back in their body. And that's what the people do. Shoot, there's been some instances, and of course it's up to you whether you believe them or not. And I know these videos are all over like YouTube and Rumble and social media of people making the claim themselves that they died, went to either heaven or hell, and they got put back in their bodies, not necessarily because somebody had prayed for it to happen. Again, God was not ready for them yet. So He sent them back. I guess He had to show them whatever He had to show them to get their attention for some particular reason. And once He did that, okay, time to go back until, I really called you home. So yes, we know we were made ultimately from the dust of the earth. And like you said, had a biology class when I went back to college back in 2011. And we got to the point, the very end of the lesson and the book was talking about evolution. And by that point, the term creation or creationism had come into the lexicon. And so the teacher asked, she said, nobody has to answer this. We said, are there any people in here who believe in creationism? So I raised my hand. I'm like, yeah. I said, I don't call it creationism. At that time, I was still firmly a Christian and referred myself that. I said, I believe in Christianity. And so she said, well, if you don't mind me asking and sharing with the class, what is it that makes you believe that there is a God and believe the Bible and things? It was verse number 19 here that I used in my example. I said, what ultimately did it, besides just thinking back all over different situations and times of my life, to say, okay, yeah, that had to have been God that intervened, because if not, I'd be dead or sitting in a jail cell or God knows what at that point. I said, but yeah, I said, there's a scripture in the book of Genesis where God says that from dust man was made, to dust he'll go back. And I said, these archaeologists and different people, if they go and dig up a dead body after so long, I said, and they open up that coffin, crypt, whatever, I said, what do you find? You find dust where the body once was. And I said, that's all it took for me. Because it's right. The body literally goes back into dust after a certain amount of time. And I said, yeah, that was good enough for me. And she was like, wow, that was really it. Like, yeah, it doesn't take much. Like I said, I didn't go into all the details about how I began praying in Jesus' name and he was moving on my behalf and things. But yeah, in verse number 19 here, I said, well, we know that's true. And this was written way before archaeology and all these other sciences came about. So, absolutely right. From the dust we came, to the dust will return. And being that we come from the dust, that actually makes us a part of the land. That makes us a part of this planet we live on, which also gives even more credence and helps to make sense of why God told Adam he would be able to have dominion and subdue it, because he was literally a part of it. So again, made all the sense in the world to me. All right, so now let's scoot on over to the book of Psalm, chapter 18, verse number 7. And it reads, then the earth quaked and trembled. The foundations of the mountains shook. They quaked because of his anger. Well, it don't take too much brain power guessing to wonder about whose anger is talking about. The only one whose anger could cause the earth to quake and mountains to shake. Talking about God the Father. And this is David here talking, King David, relaying one of the instances of what God had done for him. And as we're going to see throughout the rest of this teaching and understanding, specifically when it talks about the earth quaking and a lot of times about mountains, it relates to first a spiritual move of God. That is what it's talking about. So, as I said in the beginning, when we get to talking about the actual earthquakes are caused when tectonic plates, which are under the earth, begin to move and shift. That's what causes, or at least that's what naturally causes earthquakes. Now, there's some man-made foolery that they can do that'll cause them, but originally, the way God set it up, yeah, that's what causes earthquakes. Tectonic plates moving and shifting around on each other. And as a result, those vibrations come on up through the earth, and that's where we get the rumble. So for God to cause the earth to quake and tremble, remember, yeah, he might have given man dominion of the planet, but it's still ultimately his planet. And people can dispute this all they want. Again, it's completely up to you, your outlook, how you look at it. The earth is living. Now, yeah, it may not have blood and veins and all these other things, but yeah, we know that there are spirits in our atmosphere, the principalities. As we're going to see later here, we know that there are spirits, angels locked in parts of the earth. And we just see how the earth moves, the wind blowing, the water, the earthquakes. Okay, yeah. That's all signs of life. The earth is not a dead planet. So when it quakes and trembles, yeah, of course it's going to tremble within the reverence, within the eyes and the majesty of the power of its creator. Just like we would do and supposed to do if we're smart. The foundations of the mountains shook and they quaked because of his anger. Y'all know how hard it is, what type of explosives and devices you have to use to even begin digging out or digging through a mountain. I know back in the way old days, they used dynamite. And then before that, I guess all they had was some good pickaxes and whatever else. Takes heavy machinery or some high powered explosives, like I said, to even make a dent in a mountain. And I ain't even talking about going all the way through it. That's just to start going through it. And that's the top of what we have here. The parts that we can see, parts that we can touch and climb on, or whatever. But to make the foundations, which are way down there underground, quake and tremble. Oh, yeah. God was showing everybody, including the actual planet Earth itself, who the boss is. And that was a reminder of, if he so chooses to, not chose, but chooses to, even now to this very minute, okay, he be wiped out in the blink of an eye like that. And scientists have been saying for years. I don't know how far this is supposed to go, but I remember even back in the 80s when I was growing up, they were speculating that the state of California, and like I said, I don't know how far it goes. I don't know if it's just California or the entirety of the East Coast, California going all the way up to Washington, but they call it the big one. The big one is supposed to be the strongest magnitude earthquake, which magnitude is how seismologists that's their measure of strength for earthquakes. They say a 5.0 level earthquake is going to either completely destroy the state of California or cause it to break off and a part of it fall into the Pacific Ocean. So imagine something on that scale or that magnitude is what we're talking about here, or no, not quite that magnitude, but close to it, because it just said it quaked and trembled, and they shook. The foundations of the mountain shook. If it was stronger than that, then those foundations on those mountains wouldn't have just shaken. Okay, them bad boys would have split apart. So, of course, as always, God knew exactly what he was doing, but he was just giving them a reminder. I don't like what you all are doing, and I especially don't like what you're doing to my servant David, which, as we know, is the one referred to as the man being after God's own heart. But again, I just wanted to put this in there to show the level of strength that God was displaying to make the foundations of the mountain shake. When we had the first earthquake week before last here in or right outside of Columbia, it was measured as a 3.0 magnitude earthquake. I said, that is about right. Lexington is a huge county in the state of South Carolina. Matter of fact, I think it might be the biggest one or close to it. And the fact that I, here where I live at, was able to feel the tremors of it as strong as it was here from where I am, from the epicenter where it took place. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that was, again, that was just 3.0. So I already know, yeah, if a 5.0 or stronger were to hit the earth or whatever part of the earth, yeah, you're looking at some straight up destruction. Think about one of those natural disaster movies that they've always shown, in roads and streets coming up above each other and rising up, and lava shooting into their things along that magnitude. Yeah. That is not just Hollywood. Of course, we know for a fact about volcanoes erupting and things like that happen. And when they happen on some isolated or desolated island or some isolated uninhabited part of the land, I mean, yeah, it causes destruction to that place wherever it's happened. But you look at stuff like that happening in populated cities and towns, you're looking at some loss of life. And again, as we will see, that these 5.0 and stronger magnitude earthquakes, they're not a matter of if, they're a matter of when. Because we've already been told in the Bible that they will happen. All right. All right, so now we're going to stay in the book of Psalm. Now we're flipping over to chapter 104. I'm going to look at verses 8 and 9. Psalm chapter 104, verses 8 and 9. And it reads, mountains rose and valleys sank to the levels you decreed. Then you set a firm boundary for the seas, so they would never again cover the earth. Okay. So you remember a little while ago, I said we were going to look at how we went from where we're living on being completely covered by water to getting the land that we actually live on now. Well, this is one of the verses that talks about that. And again, this is one of the points where belief in God and science actually come together, because that's what science teaches and that's what they theorize, even though we know it's not a theory, but theorize, believe, whatever. They say, yeah, the land under the water eventually, again, back to those tectonic plates, land masses under the water started moving and pushing up against each other. Well, it's just like most things that you take objects and start pushing them up against each other. They eventually start going up like that because they don't have anywhere else to go. They can't spread out any farther. They're not going to go down. They come up. That is where our land, our dry land, came from. And again, we have a verse right here that backs that up, that gives it to us. Mountains went as high as God wanted them to go, and valleys were as low as he needed them to go. And then he says that the firm boundary set for the seas. Always amazed me that seeing that how the surface of our planet is 75% to 80% covered in oceans. Always amazes to me how with all that water, it stops right there at beaches. And the only time it comes in any further than that, well, speaking of earthquakes, that is what causes tidal waves. But outside of that, just on any normal day, yeah, you got the water that comes in so far, and then it, waves go back out, come in so far, go back out. Because the land has been raised up enough to where you don't have to worry about it covering it. Now we don't. And God already gave us that confirmation himself. Said that the earth was destroyed. Yeah, I destroyed it once by water. I'll never do that again. David is coming back here and reaffirming that that water was, the seas were never going to again cover the entirety of the earth and the land. And I wondered about that for the longest time. Then, of course, once I got saved, I'm like, oh, that's why the oceans don't come and completely cover the land. And remembering just some basic school geography, where it shows how far down land goes, the bottom of the ocean, and how the part we live on is, raised up. It's actually called above sea level. So as with all other things, y'all, God knew exactly what he was doing. Knew exactly what he was doing. So we thank him. All right. So yes, this is how we went from the earth being void and formless and completely covered with water to getting the good old terra firma that we walk on, live on, run on, stand on. And it makes sense. Our bodies are not made to live in the ocean or seas. And also, we are not made to just spend most of all of our time in the air. That's why we're land dwellers. The land is where we were made, to live our lives. Again, we're supposed to have dominion over all of them. And if Adam hadn't sinned, who knows? God might have caused some type of change or adaptation to our bodies to where we could all fly and be up in the air and go to the high altitudes, without being in some uh any type of ship or airplane or anything. And he could have made it to where we would be able to go in the ocean and just like ocean creatures, be able to breathe and operate under there. Again, without any type of apparatus or oxygen tanks and things like that. But because not that there was only one dominion or realm left for us to be able to actually live and maneuver on, and that's the land. So that's why our bodies were made and adapted for living here on land. Now, because of some ingenuity and God's blessings, mankind figured out how to get up there in the air for a certain amount of time and to go up under the water to a certain depth for a certain amount of time. And even now, again, I know they've been talking since before the 80s about developing. They think of like the Jetsons type situation, or if you're a complete geek like me, Star Wars. Remember Empire Strikes Back? Lando Calrissian, they lived in Sky City, way up there, up in the clouds. They've been talking about building those structures, and same thing about living under the ocean. They've been talking about building underwater cities and structures for people to live for the longest time. My personal opinion, and they've come kind of close. They have like underwater hotels and things like that. If you're one of the richest people on the earth and can afford to actually go to them. But even that, okay, a certain amount of time, or it takes just one mishap or disaster, and you bought it. Now, true, the same thing happens up here on land all of the time. But at least on land, again, because of the way our bodies are and were made, we can maneuver a little better as opposed to up there, way up there in the air or under the water. So, yeah, my personal opinion, I don't think we're ever going to get to the point to where, again, you got just multitudes and millions of people living completely underwater all the time or living up in the air. But again, like I say, that's just my opinion. They don't know. All right, y'all. So we are actually going to stop right here because I believe the next slide takes us into the New Testament verses that I got. See, Psalm 104. Yeah. Yep, we're going to stop right here. So I have decided that I'm going to actually do these videos in more short form now, because it ain't nothing for me to hit the 1.5, 2 hour mark and keep going. But I'm going to try to keep them now between 30 to 40 minutes. And I'm just to see how it works out. Just to see how it works out. Or, hey, if the Lord tells me to, nope, go back and drop it, well, we're going to drop it, because the Holy Spirit always has rule, reign, and his way when it comes to these releases. So, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, yeah, that's our first. This is our first part. Yeah, don't know how much we're going to be able to hit, but again, I'm in no particular rush. So, like I say, we will move and operate however God deems. I will say, whenever I do live streams, though, I think those I will keep going to, at a minimum an hour. But we'll just see next time I do the next live stream. Let's see, what are we in March now? Okay, yeah. So it should be before the end of the month. So yes, good people, from the earth we came, to the earth we are going back. And we've seen that when God wants to, one of the ways, whenever he wants to demonstrate however he's feeling about something happening on this planet, and is generally anger, he send those quakes. All right. And like I said, we're going to cover more verses that show that a lot of these earthquakes we've gotten and going to experience, man, they ain't nothing. They ain't even the tip of the iceberg, for real, for real. So, as always, good people, I want to thank y'all for joining this old country boy and listen to me jaw on about it for a while. Appreciate you. Love you. And if you all would, watching this on YouTube or Rumble, please do all that good YouTube and Rumble stuff for me. like the video, subscribe, follow, comment, share with somebody who you know might want to or might uh, need to hear this information. Appreciate you. And also, if you want to check out the audio version, then you can find Breaking Tradition on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audible, and Spreaker.com. Links to those will be in the description of the videos. So if you want to, again, check it out on the go. Video and audio completely for free, no subscription costs, no membership costs. So watch them, download and share them to your heart's content. And guys, God willing, we will be back here next time to do it all again. There is a lot happening in our world right now. So I just want to say, God bless this country, the United States. God bless our elected officials. So please allow him to work through them. And the writing's on the wall. So Lord, we are lifting up our military before you because they're going in. Okay. And also our law enforcement and the citizens, God, and just this entire planet, because this year is going to pop off a lot of things, a lot of stuff. So we want to make sure we are ready for it. And I ain't talking about just physically or naturally, first and foremost, spiritually. And that is by letting people know about God and the Son, Jesus the Christ. The only way you can be saved, the only way you can live amongst and with and co-reign with Jesus the Christ. You have got to get saved by him. You got to believe he's the Savior. Okay? So, yes, God bless us all. Keep us. God bless each and every one of you and keep you. And like I said, Lord willing, we will be back here next time to do it all again. Guys, love each other. Love each other. Of course, it's fine to love yourself, but love others just a little bit more. Okay, actually a lot more, but baby steps, baby steps. So just if you can't do the whole lot, just start off with just a little bit more. Okay. Oh man, not messing with y'all. So until then, again, got to say this again. God bless us and keep each and every one of us. And I will see y'all when I see you. Peace.